Zani is one of the most anticipated characters in all of Wuthering Waves, and now her kit has finally been shown off during the version 2.3 anniversary livestream, and many have been asking themselves the question, should I be pulling for Zani? Well, I'll be telling you all about it in this video, because these are Zani's biggest pros and cons, starting off with the pros. First off, Zani's main role is going to be that of a main DPS. And let me tell you, oh boy, does she hit that DPS mark. Zani might become one of the strongest DPS characters in all of Wuthering Waves, rivaling the likes of Carlotta and Jinchi for that top spot. I don't think she is going to necessarily overthrow them. Kuro Games has been way too good at balancing their characters, so I doubt they're going to make a massive leap like that where Zani is suddenly the best DPS in the entire game. But don't let that fool you. Zani's damage is no slouch. She is going to 100% clear all the content in the game with ease. It's not even going to be a challenge. In her best team using her signature weapon, she's going to have enough damage to clear tower 2 times over in the recommended amount of time. If what you're looking for is a stellar new DPS to add to your roster because you didn't have enough, well, here she is. Zani is going to do that for your account. But that's not the end of it, because not only is her damage output very high, it is also consistent throughout her rotation. There is no such thing as front load or back load within Zani's kit, and let me elaborate here on why this is good. A lot of people would say, wait, no front load? That's bad, right? You want to push out your damage early? Well, you would think so. But thanks to the addition of the Whimpering Wastes game mode in 2.1, it is now much better to have your damage be split throughout your entire rotation, because it means you're able to deal much better with waves of enemies at a time. And while technically you could be slower in tower than if you had front load, it still is not a big deal. It's actually just not that relevant at all, really. It's gonna take the same amount of rotations for most people anyway. So who cares about those extra 5 seconds? But because Zani's damage is mainly dealt with her enhanced heavy attacks, which she's using all throughout the rotation, even as her basic attacks, you get a DPS that just basically never stops doing damage the second they're on the field. Another big plus for Zani is the fact that she is her first Spectro damage amplifier, giving 20% Spectro damage amplification on her Ultra skill when they have Zani's special debuff. This debuff is applied by applying Spectro Frazzle on an enemy when Zani is in a team, so it's not exactly easy to access, but it is a pretty unique extra that is unique to Zani, because, like I said, we didn't get a single Spectro damage amplifier yet. Sure, we got Verena and Shorekeeper, who are Spectro and can amplify damage, but it's not specifically Spectro. This makes Zani very good for Spectro DPSs in the future, as long as they can have good uptime on Zani's debuff. Because this means that we finally have a generalist Spectro damage amplifier capable of helping Spectro DPSs who split a lot of their damage output on multiple types of damage, like Phoebe. She primarily does heavy attack damage, but she also has good basic attack damage and liberation damage. I also want to talk about the fact that Zani has some incredible AoE, because, oh lord, this character's AoE is following in the trend that we've seen of characters just being made to deal with groups of enemies in mind, and that is very nice to see, thanks to, like I previously said, the addition of Whimpering Wastes as a game mode. If we look at her attacks in her ultimate state, we can see that their range is comparable to that of GN, just without the suction. And because GN is the second, maybe third if you're stretching best AoE DPS in the game, this is very good to see. GN is known for being excellent at mobbing content, so Zani is at least going to be decent at it, which is, again, very good to see for Whimpering Wastes. She also has a higher damage output than GN, so there is entirely a chance that she might be competing with him in the Whimpering Wastes game mode, which would be excellent for Zani's meta relevance. You see, at this point, it's better to just be good in both Tower and Whimpering Wastes, instead of just trying to hyper-focus on one of the game modes, because there's so many characters that are just good in both, that being good in only one is no longer going to suffice. And because Zani has so many good attributes into her kit, I don't doubt that she's going to be good in Whimpering Wastes. AoE also helps you a lot in Tower, because in some tower floors, especially in the overdrive zone, there's going to be a lot of enemies spawning, and in the hazard zone, after that you get a boss. Therefore, you need a good balance between high damage output as well as having good AoE, and Zani seems to strike that balance perfectly. And finally, Zani is also just good in Multiwave in general. I've mentioned that a lot, especially in the context of Whimpering Wastes. However, let me go a little bit more in on it. I've already said that Zani has a very consistent damage output as well as having a good AoE, and obviously she also has good damage, so that just makes her case for Multiwave so much better. But we have another DPS who has all of those and yet she isn't considered good in Whimpering Wastes. I'm talking about Phoebe. This is because Phoebe needs Spectro Frazzle to be applied on the enemies in order for her to actually do damage. Now, I will say Shakona is fixing this, but she's still a great example. Zani is also a Spectral Frazzle character, so why isn't she suffering from the same problem? Well, she is the Spectro Frazzle. She doesn't care about Spectro Frazzle being on the enemy, she just wants it to be applied to gain her forte, and then she does Spectro Frazzle damage herself. So she doesn't actually care about the fact that enemies are dying and Frazzle is not on the new enemies, because, like I said, she is the Frazzle. However, this is going to come with its own set of challenges, because guess what? Zani is the Frazzle. That means that, well, without Phoebe you are losing a ton of damage. Phoebe gives 100% damage amplification to Spectro Frazzle. For comparison, the regular sub DPS usually gives 45% combined. Yep, so she gives almost double the buffing of a regular sub DPS. But wait, that's not all. She also reduces enemy spectral resistance by 10%. And if you have her signature weapon, you get an additional 30% damage amplification. That is just kind of an absurd amount of buffing. And obviously, Zani was balanced around the sheer amount of buffing Phoebe can do. So that means that Zani loses a lot of performance if you don't have Phoebe. Phoebe also applies a lot of Spectro Frazzle, helping Zani generate more forte. And the only other character who could match up to this amount of application is Shakona. And guess what? She's also a 5-star, and let's not kid ourselves, she's going to be used in the Kartathea team. So it's either have Phoebe or bust. Sadly, Spectro Rover simply just isn't a good option here, because Spectro Rover doesn't actually apply enough Spectro Frazzle for Zani to get enough forte for her rotation. Zani also really likes her weapon, with there only being one alternative, which is something that you probably didn't pull for, aka Tragic Comedy. Tragic Comedy is Rochia's signature weapon, and I know a lot of people who skipped Rochia. And even if you didn't skip Rochia, there's a pretty good chance you skipped her weapon. So let's be honest here, if you don't pull for Zani's signature, you're losing out on a lot of damage. She also wants Shorekeeper and Verena, but well, that's just the standard at this point, let's not be surprised here. And then for the next con, as if that wasn't bad enough, well, let's say you do have Zani and you do have Phoebe. That's very nice, right? Yeah, okay, so imagine this. What if your Zani just did less damage than your Phoebe? Yep. Guess what? If you're trying to DPS your Zani, you're going to end up losing to Phoebe. Now, I would like to clarify that a DPS Phoebe is still going to use Zani as a support because she is capable of buffing Spectro damage with her outro. However, I still want to say that as a DPS, while Zani is very good, she is competing with a queen here. Phoebe is simply going to have way more value as a character, because not only does she have way better teams with less investment, she's also just going to end up outperforming Zani at a higher investment. Phoebe really got an insane amount of stonks this update. And then for the final con, which, I'm gonna be honest, it's more of a subjective one. There really isn't that much bad to say about Zani. But let's be honest here, her gameplay looks really slow, and that's gonna turn a lot of people off. Just like how with Camellia, the fact that she was unable to move turned off a lot of people, I think we're going to get the same situation here with Zani. Her attacks look really slow and pretty clunky by Wuthering Wave standards. Sure, it's faster than any Claymore attacker in Genshin Impact, but like, the bar. A lot of her attacks also keep her in place, so if enemies move around a lot, Zani might seem to struggle there. But I will say it is a bit of a nitpick. Zani's attacks do seem to look fast enough to deal with most content, however, it might cause some issues down the road. But that's just my thoughts on Zani. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. If you have any questions, be sure to join my Discord, which is linked in the description. I'm pretty active in there, so if you ask your question there, there's a pretty good chance I'll answer it. I'm pretty excited for Zani personally. She is going to buff my Phoebe quite a lot, and I really like Phoebe, so that is always a big plus. But that'll be it from me. Peace.